It started like any ordinary afternoon outside the local coffee shop, people chatting, phones in hand, traffic humming in the distance. But the energy shifted the moment three girls stormed in, eyes locked on a quiet young woman sitting alone near the window. Her name was Maya, soft-spoken, always kept to herself. She wasn't the type to stir trouble. But today, trouble found her. Without warning, they marched up to her table, snatched her bag off the chair, and dumped the entire contents onto the pavement right in front of a small but growing crowd. The sound of everything hitting the concrete books. A wallet, loose. Change echoed louder than it should have. People turned. Some pulled out their phones. Maya stood frozen, her face pale, her lips pressed tight. She didn't yell, didn't even reach for her things. That's when one of the girls spotted something odd, neatly folded navy blue fabric, tucked carefully between a notebook and a small pouch. With a smirk, she yanked it out to wave around. But then something changed. Their laughter died instantly. It wasn't just fabric, it was a uniform. And not just any uniform, it was official, pressed, clearly respected, embroidered with a name patch and a badge that made the girls go silent mid-sentence. The kind of silence that comes when you realize you messed up badly. Faces dropped, eyes widened. People in the crowd started whispering, recording, watching the tables turn. In real time? Who was Maya, really? Why had no one seen her wear that uniform before? And why were those girls suddenly backing away like they'd just poked a sleeping lion? You could feel that something bigger was coming. And whatever secret Maya had been keeping, it wasn't going to stay hidden much longer. Maya didn't move. She stood there, calm but unreadable, as if this wasn't the first time someone tried to humiliate her in public. The uniform now lay at her feet, half unfolded, the badge catching the sunlight just enough to make people squint. One of the girls, Tara the loudest one, took a slow step back, suddenly unsure of herself. The silence around them deepened. The crowd that had gathered wasn't just curious anymore. They were waiting to see what would happen next. Maya finally bent down, not in a rush, and picked up her uniform with both hands. Her fingers moved carefully, almost like it was something sacred. No one dared speak. And still, she said nothing. The logo stitched into the sleeve was now fully visible. People began whispering names of organizations, wondering if it was military, police, or something else entirely. A few faces in the crowd started pulling out their phones to search for clues. Who was she? Why did she never say anything before? It didn't help that Maya had only moved to the neighborhood 2 months ago. She kept a low profile, paid her rent on time, and never got involved in the drama. People barely knew her last name, but the way she held that uniform, now firm, confident, and not a trace of fear in her expressions, said there was a lot more to her than anyone realized. The girls who had dumped her bag, their tough girl act was slipping fast. Then someone in the crowd whispered, "That badge looks real." Another voice followed, "Wait, is that federal?" The weight of those words spread like wildfire. Tara looked panicked now, her eyes darting around like she was searching for an exit. And still, Maya said nothing. She didn't have to. The silence was loud enough, and the truth. It was just starting to crack through the surface. Maya slowly began gathering the rest of her things from the ground. Her movements precise, like she'd done this 1,000 times before, may never in front of a crowd. A few people offered to help, but she politely shook her head. Tara and her 2 friends were frozen, unsure if they should apologize, run, or pretend nothing happened. But it was too late for pretending. Everyone had seen what they did. And now, the question wasn't what they'd done, it was who they had done it to. In the apartment building where Maya lived, rumors were already circling long before this moment. People said she left early and came back late, always in plain clothes, never talking much. Some thought she worked night shifts. Others believed she was some sort of private investigator. Now, those whispers didn't sound so far off.
What?
She doing here in a quiet neighborhood like this, keeping a uniform like that hidden? Across the street, Mr. Patel, the retired school principal, watched from behind the counter of his newsstand. He had once tried making small talk with Maya, but her answers were short, polite. She reminded him of students he'd had who carried more weight than their age should allow ones who had seen too much, too young. Something in her posture, her silence now, told him this wasn't just about a public embarrassment. This was personal. Whatever that uniform stood for, it wasn't just a job. It was her identity. And someone had tried to rip it from her. Meanwhile, Tara's friend Jess pulled her aside, whispering, "We need to go now." But Tara didn't move. She was staring at Maya like she'd just seen a ghost. Because deep down, something about that badge was familiar. Something she had seen on the news a few months ago, but back then, the woman wearing it had been covered in blood, walking out of a collapsed building. A hero. Could it really be her? And if it was, what else was Maya hiding? The crowd wasn't leaving. If anything, more people had joined, drawn by the eerie quiet and the tension thick in the air. A couple of bystanders whispered updates into their phones, recording the scene like it was a live event. Maya stood in the middle of it all, now holding the uniform in one arm and her bag, half-sipped, in the other. She still hadn't said a word, and that silence had become more powerful than any outburst could have been. Tara's mind was racing. That badge, the symbol, it was gnawing at her memory. She remembered watching a late-night interview where a survivor of a federal rescue operation had spoken calmly, even while describing complete chaos. There was footage, too, a blurred-out figure in the background carrying people on her shoulders through smoke. The network had only shown her back, but the patch on her arm had matched the one now resting against Maya's chest. Jess tugged Tara's arm again, more urgently. "We need to get out of here before someone connects it," she hissed. But Tara was stuck. What if this wasn't just about the bag? What if they just picked a fight with someone who had been in places they couldn't even imagine? Then someone in the crowd asked the question out loud, clear enough for everyone to hear. "Are you the agent from the collapse last year?" The words cut straight through the noise, and for the first time, Maya's expression shifted. Not panic, not anger. Just a flicker of something, pain maybe, or recognition. Either way, it changed everything. A man in a gray hoodie stepped forward then, someone no one had noticed before. He didn't look like a neighbor, didn't look like he belonged. But the second he locked eyes with Maya, something shifted between them. She straightened. He stopped just a few feet away. And suddenly, the mood turned colder. Tara's voice cracked as she whispered, "Who is she?" But no one had the answer yet. And Maya. She finally opened her mouth to speak. Only 3 words. But they were enough to hold the entire block. In suspense, Maya looked at the man in the gray hoodie, her eyes sharp now, like they were scanning him for something the rest of the crowd couldn't see. Her voice came low and steady, slicing through the heavy silence. "You're early." That was all she said. But it was enough to shift the energy from tense to electric. Whispers turned into full-on murmurs. Who was he? And why did she sound like she'd been expecting him? The man didn't respond right away. He just tilted his head slightly, like he was calculating something. "Didn't think you'd still be here," he finally said, voice casual, but with an edge that made the hair on people's arms rise. His hand hovered near his coat pocket, and Maya noticed. So did a few others. But she didn't flinch. Then, without turning her head, Maya said something that shocked everyone standing nearby. "Someone call Detective Kwan. Tell her the target just made contact." The man's face twitched, just for a second. "And that's?" When it hit Tara, this wasn't just some ex-colleague showing up. This was something bigger, something active. And Maya, she wasn't retired. She was still working. Several people started backing up now, their phones forgotten. Jess grabbed Tara's wrist. "We need to go. This is way past anything we thought it was." But Tara was frozen again, trying to process it all. The woman they had humiliated just minutes ago was now standing toe-to-toe with a potential threat. One who might have followed her here for a reason that had nothing to do with their drama. Across the street, Mr. Patel ducked inside his kiosk and quietly dialed a number. He didn't know all the details, but he knew enough to trust his instincts. And every one of them was screaming that something dangerous was unfolding. The man took one slow step closer, eyes never leaving Maya. "You sure you want to do this?" "Here," he asked. She didn't answer. She didn't have to. The street was no longer just a neighborhood, had become a live chessboard. And someone was about to make the first real move. Maya's grip tightened on her bag, her eyes locked on the man in the gray hoodie. For a long second, no one moved. The tension was so thick, it felt like time had stalled. Then, out of nowhere, a dark SUV screeched around the corner and stopped, hard at the curb. Two plainclothes officers jumped out, one of them yelling, "Federal unit, step back." The crowd scattered like water hitting fire. People ducked behind cars and doorways, unsure what they were even running from. The man barely reacted to Dex for the smallest twitch at the corner of his mouth. "So you called them after all?" he said. Maya didn't blink. "You left me no choice," she replied. "You broke your end of the deal." His expression shifted, something between anger and disbelief, like he'd thought he still had control. He reached slowly into his jacket, but before his hand got far, one of the agents had him pinned to the pavement. The other cuffed him fast, no hesitation. Clearly, this wasn't their first time handling someone like him. The moment felt final, like the end of something much bigger than anyone around could grasp. Tara stood, frozen across the street, her mouth open, watching the woman she had just mocked orchestrate a federal takedown in broad daylight. Jess finally pulled her back toward the sidewalk, both of them too stunned to speak. Maya turned, glanced in their direction just once, no anger, no pride, just calm, like she knew this was never going to stay quiet forever. But as the man was being loaded into the SUV, he turned to Maya with a quiet, bitter smile and said, "They're still watching you, you know. This isn't over." Maya's eyes darkened slightly, but she didn't respond. The SUV door slammed shut. The moment passed. Then her phone buzzed. Unknown number. No message. Just one image. It was her apartment door, taken seconds ago. Maya stared at the image on her screen, her calm cracking just slightly. The photo was fresh. She recognized the light on the hallway sensor. Whoever took it had been there only moments ago. But she didn't panic. Instead, she lifted her phone and quietly showed it to one of the agents. His face tensed. "We've got someone else in play," he muttered, signaling to his partner. Within seconds, backup was called, and Maya was quickly escorted away from the scene. Under protection, Tara and Jess stood in silence, still processing everything. What started as a cruel prank had turned into a brush with something much bigger, something real. Tara's guilt was heavy now. She'd humiliated someone who was risking everything to protect people like her. She watched as the SUV disappeared around the corner, and for the first time, she wasn't thinking about her social standing or how many people had seen her online. She was thinking about how badly she'd misjudged someone. Back at the apartment complex, Maya's unit was cleared. The hallway was empty. No signs of forced entry, but the tension lingered. A warning, not an attack. She sat quietly inside her apartment, the uniform now folded neatly on her coffee table. The mission wasn't over, not for her. But for now, the streets were quiet again. Word spread quickly around the neighborhood. People were shaken, but respectful. Maya was no longer just the quiet woman in Unit 3B. She was someone who had faced danger head and carried it without complaint. Her story reminded people that strength doesn't always look loud. Sometimes it walks quietly until it's forced to stand tall. And that photo, she saved it. Because Maya knew the silence wasn't the end. It was just the next move waiting to unfold.